which is the soul contract that you have with your higher self. Right. So when I'm looking at somebody's chart, I'm looking at the promise that they made to their higher self, to the creator, to their guides before reincarnating into this lifetime. What is it that you're here to do? What is your purpose? What is the karma that you want to heal? Our karma is our greatest gift. So the souls are choosing in to bring in particular karma because they want to heal it, balance it. And when we heal our karma, this is literally the biggest gift that we give to society,
Mm-hmm.
that we how we contribute, or how we're in service is with our karma.
Can you share a little bit more about that? Because I think when people think of karma, they always think of like, this was just my karma, which can be used interchangeably with the word luck or bad luck. And I like your perspective on it, saying that it's our greatest gift. How is that?
Because the soul is giving itself a chance to heal and repair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, it's your soul is growing. I mean, why do we even reincarnate in the first place? The soul doesn't have to reincarnate.
Mm-hmm.
So we reincarnate because we're looking to heal, grow, expand. We're looking to find that divine connection in the human body to remember who we are. So when we do that, that spark happens, that awakening, and we realize, oh, this is part of the karmic thing I'm here to heal. I don't think karma's not a bad thing. Karma's not out to get you. Like that's the human mind creating suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Karma is literally just a rebalancing. And you're right, there could be good karma.
Hello, and welcome to the Soul Awakening podcast. I'm your host, Kat Fowler, and I'm super excited to bring this week's episode to you. This week, I was speaking with a soul contract practitioner, and her primary work, I'll read her bio in a moment, is decoding people's names according to their sound frequency and helping them understand their soul blueprint in this life. So, of course, this is called the Soul Awakening podcast, and anything that has to do with that is something that I just absolutely could talk about for hours. So, I'm super excited to have Gellyahnah on today. So, I'm going to read her bio. So, Gellyahnah was born with intuitive gifts and always felt a deep sense of being different. From a young age, she was drawn to the mystical, captivated by psychics, astrology, palmistry, and anything esoteric that she could explore. Though this part of her had always been present, it was the ending of her marriage that catalyzed a profound healing journey and spiritual awakening. As she began to heal from childhood wounds, betrayal, and abandonment, she was led to the ancient wisdom of soul contract work. Decoding her own soul contract, understanding what her soul came here to experience, was a turning point in her transformation. It brought clarity, healing, and purpose. This work became so life-changing that she felt called to become a soul contract practitioner herself, guiding others to remember who they are, why they're here, and what their soul signed up for in this lifetime. So, this conversation was beautiful. We talked all about soul contracts, how to work with them, how to get out of them if needed, different healing modalities, karma, free will, old souls versus new souls, what we've both seen as people that work with the soul, with Gellyahnah, with her soul contract work, with the decoding the frequencies of the name, and with my work in the Akashic Records. And it's like really interesting for me as well as a practitioner to speak with another practitioner and just to compare our work on the soul level. So that comes up. I thought it was really fascinating. And we kind of got really deeply philosophical at the end. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And so sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. I will see you at the end of the show. All right. Hello, Gellyahnah. Welcome to the Soul Awakening podcast. Thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure.
So, I found you online on Instagram and I really wanted to have you on. I mean, your work is very specific and very different. And we were just chatting a little bit before we came on, and I thought it was similar to numerology, but you're like, no, this is completely different. So, if you can just share a little bit about what you do, your work, you call yourself a soul contract practitioner. But the format looks very different. So, what exactly does that entail? And how did you get into this work?
Wonderful question. We're digging right in. I love it. So this methodology is based on sound frequencies.
Mm,
Okay. And I know, so in numerology, usually we look at our birth date or birth time or things of that nature. Here, we're literally only working with the sound frequencies of the birth name that you came in with.
mm,
Okay. And so, what does that mean? That's the name that was written on your birth certificate. And I tell people, even if it's misspelled, that's the name that I need because there's no accident.
mm,
Right. So the
mhm.
premise here is that the soul pre-plans its entire life before it incarnates, right? I mean, that's not my concept. That's just the foundational spiritual concept.
Yes.
And when the soul does that, the soul is also in charge of choosing its name.
Hmm.
So the soul chooses the name, and then the parents are usually somehow divinely inspired
Hmm.
by the soul, right? So if you talk to anybody that's a parent, they usually have some kind of a story of how they came up with their names. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many moms have told me when they were pregnant, they had a dream that the baby kind of came out of the tummy and literally introduced him or herself. Hi, my name is so and so. That's one.
Right.
I'm a mom. I myself have a story. I was at a women's business conference 2 years before my daughter was conceived, and this woman got up on stage, and the moment she said her name was Eris. I'd never heard this name before, but the moment she said it, this feeling went over through my entire body, and it was like the knowing that I'm gonna have a girl and her name is gonna be Eris.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's all these stories,
Hmm.
but the soul chooses the name and the experiences that the soul wants to have essentially in the lifetime. And when I say experiences in my work in particular, I'm looking at the karma that the soul is bringing in. I'm looking at the unique talents. I'm
Hmm.
looking at the goals.
Hmm.
And ultimately, I'm looking at the soul destiny. What is the overarching purpose that the
Hmm.
soul's pre-planning? And by decoding somebody's name into the sound frequencies, I'm able to see all of that.
So let's just talk about what you just last mentioned, which is destiny. I know that concept for people can be like touchy. 'Cause some people are like, oh, we have a destiny. Am I fulfilling it? What's my sole purpose? Other people are like, no, like we're in control of our destiny. It's not pre-written. What's your feeling on that with the work that you do?
Well, my feeling is that the soul pre-plans what it wants, and 98% of our life is free will.
Mm,
So most humans don't actually necessarily, I don't want to say we don't achieve what the soul pre-plans because there's different levels of achievement. Like
mhm,
let's say somebody's coming in to be to work with children, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
so maybe their fullest potential is that they adopt 25 kids. I don't know. I'm just giving
Yeah,
you some random story here,
right.
right? And maybe instead of adopting 25 kids, they are only able to foster a few kids in this lifetime. So it doesn't mean that they didn't fulfill what they came here to do. Maybe they didn't quite reach the potential, but they were still sort of in line with what their soul's path was meant to do. Does that make sense? So that's how I look at everybody's chart. So when people are coming into me, so when I almost said when souls come into me, because I literally look at everybody as a soul. I'm like, okay, what is I see the body, but I
Yeah, yeah,
connect
yeah.
to the energy, the soul energy.
Yes.
And so when people are coming in, it's not so much am I on path, am I off? Most of us are within line of our soul path, somewhere within line.
Hmm.
But there are people that go off path, and then but you can always come back.
Hmm. And what about in the case of when a person doesn't like their name? Because that happens, like where people are like, I hate my birth name, I changed it to this, or I use this nickname instead, or whatever. Or like in a marriage, like legally when they change their name, or spiritually, a lot of people will change their name and have a spiritual name and things like that. So what's happening in that case?
Yeah, very good question. So in the case of I don't like my name, I like to remind people that it's not always about the actual name, it's about the sound frequencies. So I've had people come in and say, I want a reading, but I don't want to use my birth name because I don't like it. And that's like saying, well, I don't like my birth date. So can you just give me like a reading for, you know what I mean? I'm like, that's not how it
Hmm.
works. So I try to
Hmm.
relate it to people. Like you can't just change your birth date because you don't like the 25th and you want it to be on the 30th.
Right,
You don't have to like it, but that's when you were born. So
right.
even if you don't like your name, I remember I had this one client, she gave me such a pushback. She didn't come in for months. And I'm like, well, that's fine. I have a long waiting list. I don't, you can come in or don't come in. It's up to you. And she finally came in months later and she reluctantly gave me her birth name. And
Hmm.
then she was completely shocked in the reading when it was her to a T.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's what I tell people in the case of I don't like my name. Now, if you change your name at some point, what happens is the new name, and most of us have multiple names. Let me just preface that. Whether you don't like your name and you change it, you have a nickname,
Hmm.
or you got married, whatever the reasoning is, most of us have multiple names. I moved here from the former Soviet Union, so my name changed, right? That new name becomes an energetic overlay on top of the original birth name.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the original birth name never goes away. And when you take on a new name, you can bring in good positive energies for your own chart. You
Hmm.
can bring in neutral energies, or you can actually create a clash
Hmm.
within your own energy.
Hmm. I'm sure people feel that. I'm sure they'd see, their life starts to change a bit when they start to take on a new name. But it's
Yes.
interesting. It's making me think because I do Akashic Records readings, and the only way we can go into the records is with their legal name, whatever is currently their legal name. So, meaning if I'm working with someone that was married and they changed their name, that's the name we're using. Whatever they're using legally on their taxes, on their forms,
Hmm.
that's what I can use. I don't, so it's not necessarily for me dependent on birth name, but it is dependent on legal name, regardless of whatever, nickname, or if they are married, they use their husband's name, but it didn't legally change, whatever it may be. So it's just interesting. It's making me think about like how powerful a birth name is. And
Hmm.
how did you actually even start to decode this? Was this something you were taught? Was this an ancient science? Did you come up with this yourself? How did you, because I know it kind of looks like the Star of David a little bit, but how
Hmm.
does that work?
Yeah, so I definitely learned this. This is not something that I channeled in. And for anybody that's interested in learning this, there's way that they could and should if they're called to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually learned it from my teacher, Nicholas Snang,
Hmm.
and I saw an interview with him on Gaia. I don't know if
Mm.
you're familiar with
Yeah.
Gaia, but this is many years ago.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you the age. I was 38. And
Mm.
38 is important because I talk a lot about the age cycles, right? And
Yeah.
38 is the year of complete deconstruction and then rebuilding from the core of our truth. So for me, that was just such a difficult year. I mean, a lot of the videos, you mentioned you see my reels on Instagram. So much of that is from my personal experience, now mixed with the knowledge I have. But
Mm-hmm.
38 was a really tough one. But also at 38, I discovered this work and I
Mm-hmm.
was given a chance to be like, hey, here's, here's something you can do. And the moment I saw this interview with him, every single cell in my body had like a reaction. I mean, it was literally down to the cellular level watershed moment. I was like, what is he talking about? Soul contracts. Like it was almost like a remembering,
Mm-hmm.
right? I feel like I've done this work in past lives. And to me, like I'll tell people I speak this language better than I speak English. Right? Like I just
Yeah.
look at someone's chart and it just like the sound frequency, like I just get it. It makes sense. So that was how I started. Again, I was 38 when this work came to me and I followed it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And here we are today.
So explain a little bit about the sound frequencies, like vowels versus consonants versus how you piece that together and what that vibratory sound entails. Like, what does that mean?
Okay, so we're not using the English language,
Mm-hmm.
just so that's the first. So, I mean, if your name is written in English, well, and most of my clients are, we are converting it into Hebrew sounds. And the reason we're converting it into Hebrew is because Hebrew is one of the sacred languages of the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
Hebrew is a language that was discovered, it wasn't created. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
most of the other languages that we use on planet Earth today were created some way, somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Hebrew was actually discovered. It's a light language, right? It's one
Mm-hmm.
of those.
Mm-hmm.
So we are converting it into ancient Hebrew sounds,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I'm using as the sound vibration.
Are you talking about the 22 letters? Is that
Yes, the 22 letters. Yes,
okay? So is it kind of interwoven with Kabbalah or is it separate?
it
This
is.
practice?
This work is everyone with Kabbalah. Yes,
Oh, okay. Okay.
Kabbalah, Tree of Life. Yes.
Okay, now it's making a lot of sense. Okay. Okay, so can you talk a little bit about soul contracts in particular? Because this is a topic I think that is misunderstood, and that also people, we all make them before we come in. And so, what exactly is a soul contract? And for those that feel like they are in current soul contracts that they're like, I can't wait to get out of this. How do I break this? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, wonderful question. So, first, there's a few ways to look at soul contracts. I'm first going to explain the soul contracts that I specialize in, which is
Hmm.
the soul contract that you have with your higher self.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So when I'm looking at somebody's chart, I'm looking at the promise that they made to their higher self, to the creator, to their guides before reincarnating into this lifetime. Okay. So I'm not looking at their soul contract with somebody else, which is the next thing we'll touch on.
Hmm.
But so when I'm looking at somebody's chart, I'm looking at what is it that you're here to do?
Hmm.
What is your purpose? What is the karma that you want to heal? Our karma is our greatest gift. So the souls are choosing in to bring in particular karma because they want to heal it, balance it. And when we heal our karma, this is literally the biggest gift that we give to society,
Hmm.
that we
Hmm.
how we contribute, or how we're in service is with our karma.
Can you share a little bit more about that? Because I think when people think of karma, they always think of like, oh, karma's going to get you, or, this was just my karma, which can be used interchangeably with the word luck or bad luck. And I like your perspective on it, saying that it's our greatest gift. How is that?
Because the soul is giving itself a chance to heal and repair.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when you do that, it's your soul is growing, right? The purpose of, I mean, why do we even reincarnate in the first place? Like, we don't really, I mean, we don't have to. Soul doesn't have to reincarnate.
Hmm.
So we reincarnate because we're looking to heal, grow, expand. We're looking to find that divine connection in the human body to remember who we are. So when we do that, that spark happens, that awakening, and we realize, oh, this is part of the karmic thing I'm here to heal. I don't think karma's not a bad thing. Karma's not out to get you. Like, that's the human mind creating suffering.
Hmm.
Karma is literally just a rebalancing. And you're right, there could be good karma. Right. And it's not just our own karma. A lot of souls come here, especially the older souls, and they'll take on collective karma.
Hmm.
So that, I mean, it's a big topic.
It is. I think that's great. I'm glad you brought that up because it's collective karma, ancestral karma. I find a lot of people right now in this current time are going through and breaking ancestral karma that they came in with, particularly this year. It's like a theme. Um, yeah, I think also just the concept of, I mean, basically, I agree with everything you said. It's cause and effect. But I think what people don't understand is like, well, we've had many lives. So some of the things, everything has cause and effect. And if something's occurring to you where you don't see the cause, maybe it's because it was before, beyond this incarnation, prior to coming in, which we can see in things like the records. Can you see things like past lives in your work, or is that kind of separate? It's more about this incarnation.
Yeah, I specifically focus on this incarnation.
Hmm.
There are times when, and I am definitely not an Akashic records reader, but I've dabbled,
Hmm.
especially with my own. So I mean, let's say I could tap in if I wanted to, but it's not how I prefer to do my readings because, this is where every reader is different. For me, I prefer to focus on what they're here to do in this lifetime and to empower them into that.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So the purpose of what I want to accomplish with my clients is different. So if somebody does come to me and they're really focused on past lives, I would definitely send them to an Akashic person.
Right, right. Okay, no, that's interesting because I mean, so much of karma that we come in with is past life. So it's kind of like you are doing both in a way, but it's more just focused on the here and now. What?
Right, the here and now, and
Yeah,
how do we heal this? I'm very much focused on the
yeah.
healing aspect.
Right, right. So can you talk a little bit about the 7-year age cycles? Because that's something that when I saw your work, I was like, how does she know? Because I don't think a lot of people understand, especially as women. the major shifts that we go through in these 7 year periods. So, yeah, if you could just share a little bit about that, and then also just in the lens of what it's like to be a woman going through those things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Um, no, I love that. Thank you. So the 7 years, okay, so our soul matures in 7 year cycles.
Hmm.
And where do I get this concept? Again, it's a Kabbalistic concept. It's written about in the Old Testament, the New Testament. It's in different sacred texts. I mean, there's just so much sacred literature about things being in 7 year cycles,
Hmm.
right? I mean, including like if we take the most traditional biblical story, the world was created in 7 or 6 days, right? And then the 7 day there was rest. So seven is just that, it's just that number. And so also there was a man by the name of Rudolf Steiner,
Hmm.
and he developed this incredible system that follows the 7 year cycles of development. And Waldorf schools are based on that. I don't know if you're familiar with that,
Yeah.
but you are. Okay, yeah. So it's this deep concept. I did not make it up, but it's such a fascinating concept because the way that it relates to soul contracts, or my work in particular, what I tend to focus on is the cycle between 35 and 42,
Hmm.
because that is a pivotal cycle. Pivotal 35 to 42. I call it the spiritual awakening cycle or the spiritual deepening cycle. And even if you had your spiritual awakening at 28, believe me, when you get to 35 to 42, there's some deeper for you. That's all I can say, right?
Hmm.
So during the cycle, there's a lot of big shifts. And most people in our society, Western culture society, they're not so much living in their soul's purpose. So
Hmm.
when this cycle comes around, it literally becomes the push and pull between the ego consciousness and the soul's desires.
Hmm.
And what this shows up as, like for most people, is trauma. This is where I see marriage, divorce, career change, health issues, car accidents, affairs, you name it. This is the where people experience traumatic these traumatic experiences.
Hmm.
And within that cycle, each year has a theme. So 35 has a theme. 35 is like it's the eight, right? 3 plus 5 is eight. That's the chet sound. And so we're entering. It's a gateway. We're entering this new
Hmm.
cycle. 38, as I said, so 38 is 11, and 11 in the sound frequencies, this is the deconstruction frequency. So
Hmm.
that's why I'm like 38 is like if it hasn't fallen apart by 38, that's the year for
Hmm.
most of us. Now, here's the other thing I want to say. It doesn't mean that these 7 years are going to be doom and gloom. The more attuned you are to your soul, and the less resistant you are to actually following what your soul is calling you to do, the easier these 7 years are going to be.
Hmm.
And in fact, when we turn 40, that's another big milestone, because 40 is everything up until the age of 40 is research. Carl Jung said this.
Hmm.
Again, we see this in Kabbalistic traditions, but everything up until the age of 40 is research. 40 and above is when life truly begins. And what does that mean? That means, okay, you've now lived enough of this, societal conditioning, ego consciousness, understanding what it's like to be a human, right? Because we're all spiritual beings in a human body.
Hmm.
And now you can take this knowledge and go deeper into your soul with more comfort. That's what we're meant to do, especially us as women in our 40s. This is where we are meant to shed the masks. We are meant to say enough, like enough is enough, and really just step into who we're being. So, yeah, I can go on and on. I'm going to take a pause, but I think that covers it.
No, that was beautiful. Yeah, I found even personally that 35, 36, like those years were the breaking of illusion, the deconstruction of the foundation that wasn't solid to support what needs to be done, and then the reconstruction. And then it's just continuing. So I totally get what you're saying, because I think a lot of we talk a lot about astrology sometimes on the show, and I think a lot of people think, okay, once you go through your Saturn return at 28, 8:29, 30. That's your awakening. And I'm like, and goes through that's level one of many awakenings. And I totally resonate with what you're saying about this pivotal 7-year cycle. Also in Chinese medicine, they go by 7-year cycles. Like so many ancient practices do that. Um, so what's interesting too is like I know with Kabbalah, they used to only teach it to men after 40. And now
Hmm.
it's like everybody can access that wisdom.
Hmm.
And they have a lot of really interesting beliefs and teachings on the soul. And in particular, I know, like, in relation to what we're talking about with the 7-year cycles, they talk about how the soul comes in really not fully until you're 20, but like 2021. But they say kind of puberty is a big deal. That's why, there's all the celebrations around that. And then they say kind of like up until 20, you're kind of just living out karma. You're not exactly doing things autonomously, and you don't have the karmic reverberation and you would say like heaviness or debt that occurs after that point. Because at that point, your soul really comes in. And then from that point on, what you do, you will feel the consequences. Like there's no more, you know, 9 lives kind of
Hmm.
situation. So, do you feel like that resonates with your work? Or is that basically like the foundation, like the Kabbalistic teachings around your belief around like what the soul goes through and how it comes in and down and things like that?
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. So, I'll tell you, I don't, within my work, I don't tend to focus on like what you just said, which is, I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, the soul has such a journey here.
Mm.
Again, I tend to focus because most people don't come into me until their life's falling apart,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So they're not coming into me when they're 20, or if they are, they don't, they don't quite know what they're even asking, right?
Hmm.
So I'm more of that, like, I don't want to say it's crisis management, but I find people come into me when they're in a crisis situation, and many will come in and say, I've never had a reading. I don't even know if I believe in this, but what
Hmm.
I heard you say on your reel, just it made so much sense. I need you to tell me more of what is happening with me right now.
Hmm.
So I tend to focus on 35 to 42, and then, 42 and above, because if you miss it from 35 to 42, when I say miss it, I mean if you don't fully step into your soul's purpose, 42 to 49, the cycle sort of just repeats.
Hmm.
Yeah. But
Hmm.
as far as, the soul coming in and, its maturity, I'm going to tell you sort of my personal belief on it too is, or understanding. I don't know if it's belief, but more understanding. It also depends on your soul's age
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
your soul's purpose, because I do see souls coming in into the most tumultuous situations. And it's so, like, to say that they're not experiencing karma before 20. I and there's probably different ways to look at it. I think what you're saying is they're not generating to like really feel it, but they still really feel it as children.
Hmm.
And in fact, for them, that's sometimes the most sort of difficult period of survival, right? Because
Yeah,
some souls,
yeah.
they're coming in to survive, all of that. So yeah, so there's many ways to look at it. But again, what I focus on, I would be looking at overall purpose, overall karma, 35 to 42. Where are you in this cycle, and what are you meant to do next?
Okay. Yeah, I think so that's just one of the Kabbalistic teachings, and it's more like not that they're not experiencing the karma in a very real way. It's more like they're not, you can make a lot more mistakes before the age of 20 and not have
Hmm.
as difficult
And
of a
not have it follow
consequence.
you. Yeah.
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 That's
Yeah,
kind of
that
what
that
they're,
I can believe. And I think,
yeah.
especially when before like the age of 12 and 13, for boys and girls being bar mitzvah. Again, we're getting very specific into Kabbalah, but before that it's almost like it's the parent takes on the karma,
Hmm. Hmm.
not the child.
Yeah, yeah. So you were talking a little bit about old soul versus new soul. So what are some markers that somebody is an older soul versus, let's say, someone having a newer soul? And is that something you can see in their chart?
Yeah, so the new okay, yes and no. I could possibly see it in the chart, but I want to make this distinction because this is not something I knew until I knew. just because you're an old soul doesn't mean you're a mature soul.
Mm.
Like there's old souls here that still haven't gotten it. You know what I mean? And they're still
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they keep coming in and man, they just don't get it. Like because souls have their own personalities.
Hmm.
Or they're like really stubborn or I don't know that they're like stuck in their own ways. I don't know all the aspects, but they just because you're an old soul doesn't mean you'll get it. I've been around older souls who have so much incredible depth, unbelievable depth, but act like complete imbeciles as humans. I mean, literally, like I'm like, and it's hard to connect the two because I can feel the soul. I'm like, you are an old soul. Like you
Mm.
have been around and around, but just, and the thing is, they don't always step into their, again, this is where the age cycles come in. They haven't matured enough in this lifetime to step into their full soul's potential.
Hmm. Hmm.
So first, I just want to make that distinction. Um, and then you have some older souls who do wake up earlier because they're just on a soul level, they're more mature and they, like this is where I'll have somebody come in that's younger to do a reading and they are beyond aware. Like I'm like, wow, this is like most 50-year-olds aren't this aware.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the reason I'm answering it this way is because I don't know that there's a template.
Hmm.
Right. I don't know that I mean, older souls will definitely have markers. Like older souls, they're not just be in a relationship just to be in a relationship. Like they are so content being alone. Like the people that are content being alone and society looks at them as like the weirdos. Like these people, like they don't care. Like they're here to do what they're here to do. And they're not here to intermingle or get involved in, karma and all of that. So that is like one of the old soul markers, I guess you could say. But doesn't mean that just because you're a new soul, you couldn't be comfortable being alone.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think also old souls, I mean, the older the soul, usually the more trauma you're coming with a lot of everything. You're coming in
Hmm.
with a lot of wisdom, but you're also coming in with a lot of probably really heavy death experiences around your spirituality. That's what I found in my work. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that the biggest thing that we have to go through is them healing a lifetime where they were killed, persecuted, tortured, whatever, for just being a spiritual human being on this planet. So then, you come in and as an old soul and you got a lot of trauma and all of a sudden you have all these phobias and fears and you have no idea why. You're like, there's nothing that happened to me in this life to produce this fear. Why is this there? Or like, a really big fear of being seen.
Hmm.
So yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I also, yeah, it's interesting. I haven't thought about it that way with like the maturity level, but it is an interesting thing to think about. I think I have so much compassion for people that are going through that because I just feel like the older the soul, the more layers you accumulate, like the more imprints, the more impressions, the more like you call it samskaras and yoga philosophy, the more everything that you come in with. And it's like so much of the healing journey, like you're talking about healing a lot. My belief around that is like we are whole and it's shedding and releasing the layers that are preventing us from getting to that center point. And so I think the problem with old souls is we come in with so much because of that. We come in with so many karmic ties and things we need to work out with, and so I have compassion for them. I almost feel like sometimes newer souls will. It's almost like ignorance is not bliss, but they say it is, and there's a little bit of that attitude too with the newer souls. Like, yeah, whatever. And like,
Right.
not that they have easier lives because Earth is hard, for everybody. I think Earth school is challenging, but there's just a difference in depth that I've noticed. But most people aren't, I think, going to seek soul level readings and things like that from you or from me or whatever if they're not already in touch with that aspect of themselves. So there has to be a certain level of maturity there in order to even be interested in things like this in the first place.
I do agree with that, but also I've seen because we're going through this awakening, there's just a lot of general curiosity happening.
Mm. Oh, with
And
like within your work.
yeah, like people coming in that, like I said, I've never had a reading before, and I don't know if I ever will again. right? And so
Interesting.
they're very more like 3D type of
Okay.
perspective.
Mm,
And really they're looking for me to explain why their life is falling apart.
mm, okay. So when someone comes to you like that and they're having a crisis and you show them or you work with them with the chart, what's the typical, how does that work? Are you just kind of like, hey, you plan this and how is that received?
Well, it's received well. I mean, I don't harp on you planned this because I don't know that they did. So much of like some people come in with this lesson called foolishness to wisdom, and they make a lot of foolish choices,
Mm,
and it's their free will. So I don't know that they planned it,
mm,
right? I don't know that they planned all of their actions that caused them harm. I actually can tell you, had this client the other day, and I put a reel about it yesterday. She she came into me. She just signed her divorce papers, and I don't know. Let's say she's maybe 40. I don't remember her age exactly, but she's in that time frame of 40, I think. And she met this guy when she was really young. I don't know, 18ish. And they were together for a while, and then he proposed to her. And when he proposed to her, she said her whole body literally was like no, and she even like auditory heard no, and she still said yes.
mm,
So I don't think she planned to marry him, when like her entire intuition was screaming no at her. That was like, her soul pulling her back, but she didn't listen. So the guy ended up cheating on her, and he, chose the other woman over her. And so, what was triggered is her abandonment wound. And she had the abandonment wound all over her chart.
mm,
And, but the biggest abandonment was when she abandoned herself the moment she said yes.
mm, mhm,
So, what in that case, what I did was I explained to her, you came in to heal this abandonment wound. But when you were, 18, I don't know how old she was when he proposed, they were young. I'm like, you just didn't have enough wherewithal to choose
mhm,
yourself. And because you didn't, the lesson sort of came back, and when he left, it re-triggered all her abandonment.
mhm,
Right? So now what does that mean? She's getting another opportunity to heal this abandonment situation.
mhm,
And whether it's from past life or this life, again, it doesn't matter. Of course, it matters if, when we're digging into past lives, but I'm saying for the purpose of her, like, is this client situation, when you heal it, it doesn't matter if you're healing it from past life or you're healing all of it, right? Because the goal is let's just heal the wound so it
mhm.
doesn't keep coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's this saying that if you walked even like half a mile in someone's shoes, whatever decision you think that you're going to, judge that someone else has made, you probably would have done the same or worse with everything that they had going on, that they came in with, et cetera. So that's really interesting. And I know a few minutes back you were talking about the lessons, or you're saying foolishness to wisdom. So what are some of these lessons that you see, like some of these common lessons that souls come in with to learn from?
The most common ones that I see is I see a feeling of not being worthy enough. Abandonment is a huge one, and the feeling of separation from source,
Hmm.
which oftentimes shows up as the illusion of the father wound. I mean, it is a father wound, but it's, because all of these are illusions. Obviously, we were never abandoned by the creator. Of course, we are worthy enough of being loved by the creator. So when I say illusions of in the human sense, it's played out through our parents making us feel not worthy, somebody abandoning us, mom or dad, or just emotionally not being there, and the separation wound, which is feeling separate from source, from home, like we're all by ourselves down here. That's what it feels like.
Hmm.
These are the biggest wounds I see. As far as lessons, so certain frequencies will have particular, not all of them do. I mean, they all have a theme, but some have almost like a extra lesson that comes with it. And so one of those is this two frequency, which is the foolishness to wisdom. And these people, they tend to make foolish choices in order to step into their wisdom. These are the ones that are the natural, they're the therapist. They're like everyone's unofficial therapist because they always have natural advice and wisdom to
Mm-hmm.
share because they've lived through it all themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's sort of that frequency. There's one that I see. I can't say that this is a super common one. I mean, it's not common, but it's not like in everyone's chart. But it's the lesson of ugliness to beauty. And this is a really particular one. This is where these people are coming in here to learn the beauty of their soul's essence, but they begin looking for beauty for a young age. And of course, when we're young, we look for beauty in our physicality. So this is where I'll see people with image dysmorphia or body dysmorphia, anorexia,
Mm-hmm.
or eating, what is some sort of eating disorder, the bikini competitors, male or female. So it's more of this lesson of them trying or finding that inner essence beauty, but initially in life, it shows up through the physical. Just giving you one example. I'm trying to think. Can't think of another quick one that's coming to mind. I mean, but there's a few of them.
Oh, that's fascinating. So you find that people that have similar vibrations with names will go through similar lessons.
Yes, we can say it that way, but there's 22 letters, so many of us will have similar frequencies in our chart.
Hmm.
Because remember, I'm looking at the name, but I'm decoding the name. And so it's your first, last, and middle. And you may have a similar sounding name, but once I put it on the chart, it might give me completely different outcome.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And so we never got to this point from earlier, but in the case of soul contracts, I know we're kind of jumping around. People want to know how to break them. What's your advice?
Yes. So the first thing I tell everybody is we don't want to break them, we want to heal them. Like
Mm.
what sounds better, breaking something or healing something, right? Just even
Sometimes
the
breaking
simple.
is required for healing. Not always, but sometimes.
Well, so from my perspective, I look at everything can be healed,
Hmm.
and that's my starting point. And so I would rather heal something than have to work through it. Because even if we break a soul contract with somebody,
Hmm.
that whatever they're triggering within us is still lingering in our aura, which means it can get triggered again by somebody else.
Right.
Right.
Hmm.
So this is where I'm saying I think the best perspective is to just heal it. And that way it's not going to get re-triggered.
Hmm.
So if we're starting from that point, and I mean, gosh, this is like a personal experience I can speak to, but I had one of my relationships in this lifetime with this deep soul connection. And I don't know, we've had something like 16 lives together. And this I sort of pulled up from when I was digging in my own Akashic things, trying to figure out who this guy is.
Hmm.
And 16 lives together, he's absolutely horrible to me in every lifetime. And of course, in this lifetime, when we reconnected, I mean, it was just, that instant deep soul connection. You recognize each other. I mean,
Yeah.
there are no words to explain it if you've never experienced it. And if you've experienced it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So with him, I'm completely shortening the story because it's such a long story. But with him, what I realized is in order to quote unquote break this contract, I
Mm-hmm.
actually had to heal the wound between us.
Mm.
And so once I realized that that was my focus with this guy, with his soul, really, because I had nothing to do with him. Once we stopped talking, there was no communication. So it's not like we were going to sit down and
Mm.
talk this out. That's not an option. So all the work I was doing with it was a soul to soul connection,
Mm-hmm.
and the energy work that I do. Yeah, and you know this, of course. I mean, but I'm saying this for the audience. There's so many different forms of energy healing,
Mm-hmm.
many different modalities.
Hmm.
So the one that I practice, it's called connecting with the creator, and we connect directly with the creator, with source energy. It's a soul to soul connection, and when the creator comes into our aura, everything gets realigned, all our relationships get realigned. And so I started doing this work. Continuously, and I became a practitioner. And I was in it, when you're a practitioner, and I'm doing it with clients. I'm in it pretty much daily.
Hmm.
And one day, out of the blue, I haven't talked to him for 3 years. Out of the blue, he sends me this novel text message. Like, it was a long, I'm like, literally, it's like a never ending text. And he's like, it starts out, he was like, what is going on between us? He's like, I've never felt a connection like with you like I have with anyone else. Mind you, we haven't talked for 3 years. He's with somebody else. He's just I don't even know what he's doing with his life.
Hmm.
And he's like, I had this dream about you last night. And he goes into this, explaining this whole dream. And I'm sitting here and my jaw's wide open. I'm like, he's literally feeling the energy work that I'm doing, and it's realigning him out of my aura, right?
Hmm.
It's realigning him out of mine, and it's realigning me out of him, and it's healing, and it's healing, and he's feeling this,
Hmm.
right? And I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is probably the best feedback I've ever received on this energy work,
Yeah.
and this isn't a guy who practices, he doesn't have like a spiritual modality. He's your just typical
Hmm.
person. So anyways, so I'm sharing this because it was so nice to heal this between us, knowing that it was a lifetime of garbage between us, of hurt and pain,
Hmm.
and to know that I was able to heal. Now, he didn't even have to be a participant,
Yeah.
right? That's the beauty of healing,
Physically. Yeah.
physically or spiritually. I'm sure his soul was participating, but the healing happened, and there you go. So, again, you're asking me, like, whenever somebody asks me how to break a soul contract, this is my go-to story, because with him now, there's no, gosh, when you go through this deep soul connection with somebody and there's heartache, like, it just lingers in your heart, no matter how many years will go by. Like, it's always like in the back of your energy, the back of your mind. Like, it's one of those things you can't shake. So the beauty is it's completely on mute,
Hmm.
right? Like, I know he exists. I know there's a deep soul connection that never goes away. That's the other cool thing, is because the deep soul connection never goes away, whether you love them or you hate them. It's always there. But
Hmm.
now there's no hurt, there's no pull, there's no trauma, there's no you did this, you did that. It's just neutral, and it doesn't really do anything.
I think that's the key sign that you've moved forward is when it's neutral, when there's
Yeah.
no charge, meaning you hear their name or whatever, and you could easily wish them well. Or at the least, you're just like, okay. But if there's any charge from hearing someone's name or whatever, then there's still stuff to work through for sure.
Mhm.
Um, I loved what you were just saying because it brought up so many thoughts in my mind. So, to your point, I think sometimes people think, okay, I'm done talking with them. This happened. That's it, block. And ghosting's like an epidemic right now in our culture, right? And so it's like you can do that, but if you are thinking about them still every day, if they're still creating agitation in your mind and this and that, then that's really just not real. Like the block is it's just an overcompensation for you trying to shove down something that you need to work on. And if it keeps coming up, then you're still very much energetically connected. And I will say, like, with what you're talking about with the method of healing, sometimes what I've noticed, because I've worked in a similar way, is um sometimes their spirit is not ready for conversations like that in the spiritual realm. Like sometimes you can be ready and you can do your part and you can release yourself from that. But sometimes I found their spirit may not be, like literally, like spirit may not be ready to move forward with that level of healing until they are ready. And then, we'll be alerted similar to the way that they were, whether it's a dream or whether you're in meditation and you get a knowing. Um, but it is really interesting how we can do that. Maybe if you can share a little bit about your process for that, because I loved that idea. Because I do feel like, basically what you're sharing kind of is like a very strong karmic partner, like connection. And those are tough because, like what you were saying, like they break you open. Like it is the most challenging relationships you'll have. And it's almost like there's this magnetism that you cannot explain, that you're almost like, I don't even know why, but this is where we are. Like, that's just what happens with these karmic partners, where it's almost like you came. All right. My like understanding of that through my own experience and my work in the Akashic Records is before you came in, you guys love each other on the spiritual plane. Whoever has this karmic relationship, like you could have been siblings in a past life, like mother, daughter, but whatever. And there's so much love, but there's also a lot of things that happened on the human plane and with the ego mind and everything that accumulated. And you're like, hey, let's work this out because we keep repeating this pattern. And I'd really like to stop doing that so we can just be good. And then you come down, and then all of a sudden you just have this crazy chemistry or like these circumstances where you're just like, I don't even understand why, like they're not even my type, whatever, but you just
Hmm.
are, there's an attraction and there is it's like almost like a cosmic law, like where you must meet and go through these experiences with this person.
Hmm.
And I found that for my particular situation, that was similar to yours in a way. Um, Man, at first I knew I wasn't healed because I would always say, if I could go back in time, I would tell my younger self, don't date them. And then I was like, now I've gotten to the point where I'm very thankful because if that didn't happen, I would never have gotten what my biggest core wounds wouldn't have been revealed. I would have never gotten to heal them. I would have never seen how much I needed to work on myself in particular areas outside of that relationship and coming out of it. And so I think that's like for listeners hearing all this, just like if you're having, because everyone has karmic relationships, um, especially romantic ones for the most part, unless you're like having a life of a monk. But even then, you might have karmic relationships.
Yeah.
But I think like a good tell of where you are in the journey is like, what are your true feelings towards that person? And do you feel it was like a waste of time, or do you truly feel it was a blessing in your life that you're thankful for at this moment? So I love that you shared that. Maybe you can share a little bit about that process of healing. So if someone's listening, they're like, I want to do that. I know I'm going through this with this person. I don't talk to them anymore, but how do I work through this? If you could share a little
Yeah.
bit about
Oh,
that.
absolutely. Yeah. And I just want to say I love what you just shared because I just want to say I agree in a sense of like these karmic connections are the most intense.
Hmm.
And I'm so sorry, I don't know your thoughts on this. And if you speak to this, I apologize and bring this up, but maybe we can mention this.
Yeah.
With my clients, I see people come in and they're like to the point where I'm like, oh my God, another person. And they're like, I think I've met my twin flame. Like everything is a twin flame. And I'm like, we cannot all be in a twin flame relation. And when I pull up their charts, I can actually see a karmic connection.
Mm-hmm.
So just so you know, because we didn't talk about the soul contracts between, people per se, but when I pull up two charts next to each other, I can see if there's a karmic connection. And
Mm-hmm.
so all these quote unquote twin flame people that come into me and I pull up their charts, I'm like, this is actually just a karmic, well, not just a karmic connection, but it's a
Right.
karmic connection. But
Right.
also, I'm going to take this a step further. Um, it also depends on your soul connection. And certain souls just have a deeper connection than others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example. I have karma with my ex-husband,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually the same karma that I have with this guy that I was talking about, but
Mm-hmm.
the two felt so different to me
Mm-hmm.
because of our own unique soul connection to each other.
Right.
So
Totally.
yeah, so I just want to take this a step further. And I don't know if you have any if what you've experienced with a twin flame and karmic and all of that, but
I don't get too much of the twin flame thing. I do think that I did when I first started doing this like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And I feel like that could be a little bit of like the new age community. It's a little bit of a trap. I'm not saying that your real, like husband, lover, whatever, like the one that not your wound mate, but like your actual soulmate, like in this life. I do believe that we have that counterpart. Not saying that they're one soul split. I don't buy that. I just think we have these people in our lives that are like that. But I think when you use the term twin flame or even soulmate, it can keep people looped in very harmful situations because
mhm.
there's that extra layer of illusion of like, well, it's just my twin flame. Well, it's just my soulmate. So I don't know, they treat me like shit or whatever. And or like I'm running or they're running or whatever. There's a lot of language around this like
Yes.
online. And
Yes.
so I haven't found that often. I did see that more in the beginning, but I did feel like at least, I mean, yeah, I have seen, I remember one reading where they did show me the imagery of two separate flames dancing around each other. And then I was like, oh, I guess twin flames is a real thing. So, like, it was validated by an image because I had a lot of, beliefs around, like, no, I don't think so at all. I have seen that once. So I'm not like discounting it, but I do think it's a very slippery slope slash like dangerous territory that we can go down, especially if we have a lot of traumas that we have not healed from our emotional life with our parents and inner child and things like that, that when you get into a very challenging relationship, if you are calling someone your twin flame or your world's deepest soulmate, it can keep you looped in a cycle for much longer than you really need to be. And I can say that because I know, yeah, it happens to quite a lot of people where they're like, they don't use that twin flame terminology, but they'll say soulmate. They're like, but they're my soulmate, this and that, which is similar, but we have so many soulmates, our
Right.
roommate's a soulmate, our sister's a soulmate, our mom can be a soulmate, our dog is a soulmate. Like, there's levels of soulmates, but yeah, that's my opinion on twin flames. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I've only very rarely one time ever seen an image that the person that was inquiring about it, it truly was they were actually on Earth and their other counterpart passed away and that other flame was off Earth. And
Mm.
so that I've seen, and maybe it's just because that other person was passed that I saw it that way. But outside of that, I think just the twin flame thing, I don't know.
Okay, so just so you know, I agree with everything you said
Yeah.
100%, literally, and I agree with you. It's a bit of a trap, and I mean, I put out a reel on this recently too, where I was like, do not use the labels to get stuck in these cycles. It's the labels are irrelevant. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
that's okay. So we're good. I mean, again, I'm genuinely curious to hear your perspective because, like I said,
Yeah.
for me, I don't see the twin flame thing. I see karma.
Yeah.
That's what I see coming in.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, okay, beautiful. But back to your question of how do you heal something like this? Um, well, if you're asking me how I did it, again, for me, it was all through the energy work
Hmm.
that I do, which is, it's a little bit, all modalities are different. And like I said, with this in particular one, what we do is we go into trance, and I do these live healings. I do them once a month. I'll have anywhere between 50 to 100 people on a call, and there's usually a themed call. So
Hmm.
a few months ago, we actually did the theme on healing our karmic relationships.
Hmm.
And we go into a trance for an hour and a half with the creator.
Hmm.
And the idea is really all we in this modality, all we have to do is relax and accept. And because when the creator energy comes in, it does all the quote unquote dirty work in your aura, in your energy field. It's
Hmm.
like a chiropractic adjustment. Like you wouldn't go into the chiropractor and start to move your, like you let the chiropractor do their thing.
Hmm.
So it's similar here. And so as long as somebody is able to relax and accept, most people will have a pretty supernatural experience to the point where when we come back as a group afterwards, they're like, what the heck just happened? How did you do this? Like, because most people come in thinking this is like a meditation, right? Most people have experienced some sort of meditation.
Hmm.
So I always stress, I'm like, this is not a meditation. We are doing a full on energy, direct connection with the creator. So that was the work I was doing when I had the experience with the guy,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So if anybody wants to experience that, like I said, I do them monthly, the sessions. I don't do them one on one, but I do them in a group setting. And I do have all the recordings are available in my membership. Again, I only say this because if somebody listening is like super struggling with that, with a karmic connection, and they're like, I want to listen to that. How do I do that? It's a possibility. But on a live basis, I do a different theme each month.
Do you find that when you're doing that work, that is it like you'll see chords dissolving, like entanglement dissolving, like you're saying kind of the creator's rearranging everything in the field. What does that look like to you?
What does it look like? Oh, that's a good
Or
question. So,
feel like, or feel
yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. I want to articulate it
Yeah.
in a way that makes sense. So first, I want to say there's no cord cutting in this
Mhm.
work. I find with cords, you could separate them, but the moment you think of that person with charged emotions, the cord just reattaches.
Hmm.
right? So cord cutting isn't really the best method of healing, especially if you're so deeply connected and charged with somebody. Um, in this work, what the creator does is literally, so if we're talking about another person in this case, it will realign them out of your aura. Let's say okay, let's say our two souls are deeply connected, and in this life, we're sort of meant to, I don't know, offer each other support on an energetic level, but not actually physically ever even interact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what the creator will do is the creator will silence them in your aura. The word silence gets used a lot. And that's why I even said this guy is on mute now. Like I don't feel him, I don't hear him, I don't tap into him. He's literally on mute, but I know he's in my aura. Like he's never gone. I mean, the soul connection's always there.
Mm-hmm.
And if I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to, I could tune in, but I'd have to sit and concentrate. Before doing this work, I was just always tapped into him because I was in his energy. I was digging, and I couldn't pull out even when I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
because we were so enmeshed.
Mm-hmm.
So with another partner, there's a silencing that happens. And I should say this is the same for like I have a pretty big mother wound. So one of the biggest healings that came out of doing this work was between me and my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have a very good relationship for most of my life, but after doing this work, what I noticed is she started to rise with me because she was receiving the benefits of the healings without ever doing the healings,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's a soul to soul type of a thing. So what it feels like when you're in the session, it's a gentle trance that most people experience. People will feel tingly hands, tingly feet, a lot of heart chakra warmth or coldness. The energy comes through the back. So a lot of people will feel heat in the back. And as it comes out the heart chakra, a lot of people report having heart palpitation. Well, it feels like your heart's, I mean, it's not really beating, but
Mm-hmm.
it feels like that because when you're that sensitive to energy, you literally will feel the energy come through your heart chakra.
Mm-hmm.
That's an
Mm-hmm.
extremely common symptom right there. A lot of my people that come in are so much more visual than me. I mean, I'm pretty visual, but when I do these sessions, I tell you, I turn my psychic eye off because I don't need my psychic eye, my third eye, to do the healings.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll get nothing. Sometimes I'll get blobs of like purple, like we call them the
Mm-hmm.
lava lamp blobs, because
Mm-hmm.
that's literally almost everyone that's been on my calls has reported seeing lava lamp blobs. And I think that happens as we are assimilating into the creator's being.
Mm-hmm.
But people will have these crazy imagery. People meaning like, the clients that get on the calls. And everyone has a different experience. And then we'll have people on the call that saw the same exact visions.
Mm-hmm.
And from all over the world, my last call, I had 15 different countries represented.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's I don't know if I'm doing it justice, to be honest, if I'm explaining it right, but it's essentially just the supernatural experience. But you don't actually see the healing, the result, until you go to live your life.
Yeah.
Meaning, then day one, day two, day three, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I feel different. And this is what people tell me when I had anxiety, and all of a sudden I feel really calm. I
Mm-hmm.
was dreading this thing, but all of a sudden I know it's all going to come together and there's no issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's making me think a lot about different things, especially like in the case of relationships with people, karmic relationships, things like that. It reminds me so much of like quantum entanglement and the principle that like you can be quantumly entangled with someone. They could be in another galaxy and you can literally be feeling what the other person's feeling instantaneously. And what I think is interesting with like energy healing, Akashic work, what you're talking about, and all the different types of energy healing is that I feel when a release happens is when one person at least, especially even if the other person isn't participating at all, let's just say you're only healing yourself, but you have this deep desire to move on from a certain memory or person in your life. I think when you can bring in enough light, energy, healing, the energy from your heart, use that to heal your body, it's almost like you raise yourself and you shift your alignment. And I don't want to say like what you were in, whoever's listening is like not good, but it's almost like you elevate your frequency to the point where it's just not a resonant match anymore. And then that entanglement starts to weaken itself. And it's
Hmm.
not usually an instantaneous process. Sometimes it can be, but I think other times it can be a process. Like healing can take time, integration from sessions can take time. And it's like, especially I really do find the longer and the deeper the things that we go through in this life, usually it takes pretty long to come out of it too. It's like if a ship is a really big ship and it's making a turn, it's going to take a lot longer than a tiny little jet ski that needs
Hmm.
to just quickly, turn around, depending on the depth and the length of the relationships and the connection. But so it's just interesting. It's making me think about how, especially if someone's listening and let's just say they want nothing to do with this person that because there was abuse or something really difficult, that like I do want to share, like they really can do that themselves as well with like different methods, like you were saying, aligning with the creator, aligning with the light of their own soul, going into deep meditation, setting the intention that I want to release this energy from my field and really saturate myself with my true soul's essence, my true light from within. They can use Reiki, they can use whatever, acupuncture, like whatever, modality they want. But I do think that healing is very possible as long as there is the true intention to do so. And I think what can be hardest for people is the letting go. Because we can say we want to let go, but then it's like when you work with energy, like you do, like I do, someone can say they want to let go, and then you're in a session with someone, you're like, your energy doesn't want to. Like you're saying that, but if you did really, then you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be in
Right.
this position where it's still in your field all the time. So I think it's the sincerity, like the depth of sincerity of being like, I've had enough of this. And I'm truly ready to let go because I can see how it's run its course. Lesson has
Yeah.
been learned. And I also have found that humans that don't do anything like what we do, don't know anything about it, are doing the same kind of work in spirit energetically just through living their life and going through these mental processes where they decide, I'm done with this, and that. And they may never do an energetic healing session or, spirit session or connecting in that way. But once they've learned the lesson and they've decided, I don't need this anymore, like, thank you for the lesson, the connection breaks. The
Hmm.
connection's done. The entanglement fades. So I don't know if you've seen that as well, but it's just everything you were saying was bringing up all these different thoughts, especially with like two particles in different solar systems, lighting up with each other, and then
Yeah.
that can shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the quantum entanglement is very real.
Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah. So is there any last thing you want to share around your work, soul contracts, anything that we talked about that you feel like, oh, I feel like I want to share this for anyone listening?
I do want to say that, in regards to soul contracts that we create with other souls, to your point, what you said, souls actually love each other and souls never actually want to hurt each other.
Mhm.
So when people come in and they say, I got together with this person like brutally hurt me, but I know it was my soul contract, so I accepted. It's not actually always like that. The soul contract was maybe for you two to meet and have an experience, but it doesn't mean it had to be so painful. And
Mhm.
this is where I think people will confuse free will and their own actions with this was meant to happen.
Mm,
And I don't think that's actually spoken about enough in the spiritual circles. Like what I hear, when we talk about soul contracts between two souls, it's, well, we have karma, so clearly they were going to hurt me. Like, for instance, in my case with this person, I didn't have to get into this messy entanglement with him. Yes, we were going to meet, but it could have been healed in a different way. But
mhm,
because of our own, this is where the unprotected mind and the ego, all the other stuff comes into play and it gets messier than it maybe needed to.
mhm. No, I love what you're saying. It reminds me of that. I think it's like, I forget the Shakespeare quote, but essentially, like, we're all actors in this play, right? So, some people, a lot of especially in yoga philosophy, a lot of people have that opinion like, well, we're all just acting. And once the curtain comes down, we go back to who we really are. It was just a play, this and that. And it's like, yes. And I get what you're saying, like, totally with like, okay, well, it was just karmically contracted. But there's free will, like you said. And then sometimes people take that too far, or the soul gets lost, whether it's the abuser or the person who was part of that. And then it loops and it continues to the point where it creates more suffering than we would say it could. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like things happen the way they were supposed to happen. And I know this is like getting really deep into like philosophy, but I don't know if you feel that way, in the case of what we're particularly talking about. But sometimes I think sometimes only in hindsight, even in the case where maybe someone's holding a lot of shame around like, how did I stay in this relationship? I should have left sooner, this and that. There's some medicine in that occurred, and there's a reason, and there's timing. There's so many factors that can happen, and we do have the autonomy and the free will to decide like exit sooner, exit later, experience more. But sometimes there's a reason for that the soul maybe needed to get to a certain point where they had to endure a certain level of things in order to get that moment of like that aha moment. It's almost like they couldn't have gotten it any other way. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree, and I think this is the level of our own soul's evolution, and
Hmm.
this is where everyone's journey is so unique
Hmm.
because yes to what you said and yes to what I said, to truth, they're both truths.
Hmm.
Each soul's journey is just a little bit different. I think what I just wanted to point out is, again, let's not make soul contracts. Let's not use that phrase to,
Yeah,
uh, trap ourselves.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing. How can people find you and your work and your information online? I feel like it's really helpful, all the reels that you post.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So Instagram is usually the best way. And Instagram, I am Soul Contracts Practitioner. So it's soul underscore contracts underscore practitioner. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it is what it is. Um, and if they want to find, I mean, I do have a website, and it's yoursoulscontract.com. Souls with an S. So yoursoulscontract.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think this conversation had a lot of philosophy to it, and also there's a lot of food for thought.
Yeah.
So I hope that this helped people listening, and um, especially for the women on this journey where they're now kind of considering all these different factors, like sending them lots of love, and I do hope and I do feel that this conversation definitely helped them along their way see the kind of higher perspective behind what's going on in this human reality that we're living. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. It truly was a pleasure.
So, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the Soul Awakening podcast. When you subscribe, you'll be notified of our new interviews and episodes that release every Friday. You can find all the episodes online on my website at katfowler.com. You can watch this episode on Spotify and also watch it on YouTube, or listen anywhere else that podcasts are found. And please don't forget to leave a review or a comment about what you thought about the episode while you're there. And also, if you got this far, there's a gift for the Soul family listening. If you're interested in doing a session with me, you can use the code SOULPOD for 10% off your first Akashic Records reading, SOULPOD. So if you love the information that you heard today and it sparks something in you, feel free to share it with your friends and family as well. I'm your host, Kat Fowler, and thank you again for listening. I'm wishing you lots of peace, love, light, and clarity on your personal soul contract with your higher self and with those that you are in relationship with in this life, and lots of healing for your heart. So I will see you on the next episode.